She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fisher.
Okay, we're here with Rachelle McCloud. This is going to be good because I like everything about your social media and especially like everything about your hair. For those of you that aren't watching, you need to go to YouTube and see how beautiful she is. But no, seriously, we're going to talk about topics that affect all of us. And one thing is this perpetual anxiety that hangs over everybody right now. I don't know if it's because we're so politically divided, spiritually divided, state by state divided, but there's something about this anxiety that feels like it's going to get us. I want you to help us get over anxiety like your website promises, and we can do that probably in the next 30 minutes, but I think that's an exaggeration. So tell me, what is it? How can you help us?
30 minutes is a long time to really, brain work wise, a lot can happen in 30 minutes in real talk, because this anxiety is the body is trying to heal itself. Mm-hmm. Our mind and body are trying to heal itself. It's trying to communicate about what's going on in the world. But what happens is that the process for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress really works so quickly and well, but it has to be able to complete. And so because there's a different part of our brain that its job is to keep us away from pain, it really can block that healing process. And so then we don't get those symptoms resolved. They keep cycling around in our body and our mind, and they just repeat, and then they grow. And pretty soon there's an explosion of some sort where we're irritable, or we fall asleep, or we're fighting, or we're fleeing. And that's really a sign that this process isn't completing. So if we really understand that all we got to do is help this process complete, we can really think about this anxiety in a different way. It is our system trying to heal, trying to grow, trying to understand, trying to help us to be accurate and awesome and help our dreams come true. And so one of the things that is really, I work with people differently, is that I'm not trying to do traditional talk therapy, which focuses on the prefrontal cortex, the thinking center, the rational mind, the understanding. That part of the brain really does fabulously when this process is moving well. And so I really come down into the survival system, which really is what starts blocking all the information coming from all of our senses, and really blocking that from making it to the part of the brain, that the front of the brain that can really make that understanding, make that clarity of thought, make the problem solving. And so I really focus right there. And that the native language of that part of the brain is not words, logic, reason. It's not, you can't out logic it. It doesn't care.
Right.
It's really listening to our body and trying to figure out, are we going to live or are we going to die? Are we safe or are we in danger? Because if we're in danger, we're locking this thing down. We're not letting anything through. We're going to survive. We don't need to grow. We need to survive. And so if we can use the body, we can really influence that part of the brain to open up this process and let the process complete. And it's really that simple. And so when we can use interventions that last like 30 seconds, 2 minutes, and we can use the body to send information to that part of the brain, and all of a sudden, everything's working really, really well. And we can really resolve symptoms in 30 seconds, in 2 minutes, in max 10, 40 minutes, right? So we can really create a lot of deep shifting very, very quickly when we work with the brain instead of running from it, suppressing it, those sorts of things.
So is there some device you have that measures if you're going down the wrong path and it's like, the dog collar, the shot collar, you go, nope, don't go there, go here. I mean, how do you retrain the brain?
Oh gosh, there is devices on that. I don't use them. I think that would be really fun and nerdy, and I'd love to get a hold of that. But really, we really want to listen to our survival system. Are we feeling anxiety? Are we feeling increase of frustration? Are we feeling emotional? That's really this stuff moving through, and that stuff has a hard time getting through because it registers in the brain as pain.
Then are we sometimes thwarting it and putting a roadblock up?
Yeah. If you think about the survival system's job is to get you away from this pain, it like hijacks all of us to do that as well. And we'll do this to each other. Just get over it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't think about it. All this, it's like we're trying to get away from our own processing system. We're trying to get away from our pain as well. And it's really like, no, don't stop it. Help it complete. Help it finish. Help it do what it needs to do. It doesn't take a long time. We think it's going to take forever because it is very difficult for our brains to process fear,
now,
jealousy, rage, anger.
Don't people say that generalized anxiety could just be they wake up and they are anxious? Yes. So is that anxiety targeted toward getting your kids off to school, maybe seeing, an ex-boyfriend you don't want to see, driving a congested highway? Or is it just that some people are wired that way, Rachel?
It's really fear moving through the system.
Yeah.
And some of us get a lot of practice moving fear through successfully. And when we have successful opportunities to move our brain completely through this process of processing fear, the brain gets better and better and better at processing fear. But if we don't get that, our brain sees fear as a threat to us, and then all of a sudden we're anxious right when we wake up. And so if you think about all these situations that come up, it's just really emotional distress, fear. And that fear needs to complete. It needs to do what fear does. And actually the brain turns fear into hope and courage. And so if I see somebody that's really with these real big anxiety disorders, or just anxiety in general, their body is trying to process this energy, this information, and make courage, make hope, because we do need hope and courage living life, and we need to be brave. Things are scary.
Yeah.
But when we're not using fear appropriately, it really can cause problems and disorders.
Okay, give me an example then. Give me something that's very common with a woman, let's say 35, 54, and she comes to you and sits down and says, oh my gosh, I'm having the hardest time, because there are some hormonal issues that happen to a woman during that time that does amplify even the smallest thing. I would know, personally speaking, because I've walked through that. And that perimenopause and menopause are tough on your emotions. So what are some things you can do that are concrete that could help someone listening right now?
Yeah, I really would recommend people to grab an intervention like emotional freedom techniques. It's easy to learn. It's quick. It's simple. You're using the mind-body connection. You're tapping on meridian points. It's like emotional acupressure or acupuncture, but without needles. And so you can do it to yourself, and you can really send those messages to your brain, hey, we're safe, and open this whole process up and get healing happening. And so I would have them focus on whatever is causing fear and use this intervention. Shall we try some?
Yes.
Shall we try a round?
Yes. My tummy's getting tight. Okay, go.
Okay. I want to walk you through this experientially. And so I want to invite you and the listeners here to think about something that makes you feel a little anxious. Let's not go maximum anxiety, but something that's some anxiety right now. Okay. And then I want you to answer the question, just let it come up in your mind. What's so anxiety provoking about this? Okay. When you have that answer, I want you to ask, and what's so bad about that? I'm just going to go a little bit deeper into this. And when you've got that in your mind, I want you to hold that there, and I want you to take a look in your body and just notice what's going on. How is your body expressing this anxiety as well? Where do you feel the anxiety the most in your body? Yep. And just while you're tuning into that, I'm going to invite you to tap on the side of your hand at like that karate chop point.
Okay.
And you can tap here. You can tap on all these points I'm going to guide you to tap on for like 3 to 10 taps. Doesn't matter. You can even tap for longer if you'd like to. Okay. And just feel that sensation in your body. See what's so bad about this anxiety thing. And then I'm going to have you tap on the beginning of your eyebrows close to your nose, but on the hair. And you're just going to, tap a little there. And then come to the outsides of your eyes. And you're going to tap there. And under your eyes. And just notice what's so bad about this. We don't need to help with the positive side of these things. That energy just zips through the brain's healing process. But it's this anxious stuff. What's so bad about this? And under your nose. Good. under your lip, and feel that sensation in your body. Pay attention to it, acknowledge it, collarbone. This, this one is, if you feel the little round bones there, you come about an inch under and an inch out. You're not going to get it wrong. Just tap around there somewhere. There's a lot of wisdom in the body. It knows what we're doing here. And then under your arms, and it just the side there, if you have a bra on, or if you would have a bra on, in the middle of that bra, underneath your armpits, about 4 inches. And then I'm going to have you come to the front of your ribs, like on your ribs, under where your nipples may be at this point. And then if you imagine yourself shaking someone's hand, you're going to see your thumbnail close to you, and tap on the side of that too. And for your first finger, your middle finger, and your pinky finger. Side of your hand and back of your hand. You don't have to keep a particular order. This back of your hand is between the ring finger and the pinky finger. There's a little divot between those bones on the back of the hand. And then the top of your head. Okay, and then take a deep breath and tune back into what's so bad about that anxiety thing and that sensation in your chest. And just notice. Did that make the intensity increase? Does it stay the same? Does it get a little less intense? Does it just shift? Is it not there anymore, but it's somewhere else in your body? What are you noticing?
I noticed that Xanax sales in Little Rock just dropped. And medical marijuana. People, you don't have to use your card anymore. Not that I've used it. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but my point is my heart rate has come down. So when I got into that cycle of that thought, and then the next thing that triggered it, my heart rate was going up as we were talking about, even though I know I'm here and there's...
That's right.
That phantom thing won't even happen today or whatever it is, right? But then when we went through all that, if you could feel it, my heart rate now is totally normal.
Yeah, that's right. And our body doesn't do time. It doesn't know that the past is the past and the future is the future. If you're thinking about it, or it's experiencing it now. And so then it's going to send all this information up about it. That it's like, I need to tell you something, the problem solver in your brain. And so it's sending all that stuff up, and then your survival system's registering this pain or this threat is moving through your system. So it's clamping the information down. And so your body's trying to send this information up, and your thinking center is trying to grab the information. And when it can't grab it, we'll just notice it circling and circling and circling. It's trying to do its healing function. It can't get the information. And so these interventions just really help. I used to think the intervention was so powerful. It's not, it's the brain function. But these interventions go in and help the brain right where it's struggling. And so all of a sudden, the communication loop in your body and mind is happening nicely. It's happening quickly. It's happening as it should be happening. And people ask me, is this magic? No, this is healthy brain function. Brains resolve anxiety.
Brains were wired to resolve our own anxiety, is what you're saying.
That's right.
What got you interested in this path? Because this is unique to therapy.
Yeah, I became a therapist and I practiced talk therapy, and I just sucked at it. I was not good. I was not getting good results. I did not feel like I was helping anyone, and I didn't feel like I was equipped to help anybody. And I was really angry. I was like, we're going to sit and talk about these problems they have over and over and over again for years. And like, they need help now. And I just felt very powerless. And so when I was laid off, I just quit the whole field. Our department closed, and I just quit. But I had my own mental health crisis about 3 years later. I had several throughout my life, but I was so high performing that I escaped the radar of having a mental illness. But I did have a mental illness. And I had 3 children under 3. I'm already a therapist, and my brain is no longer working. I can't solve my own problems. I have brain fog and fatigue, and I'm confused. I'm storing jars, like I'm doing some survivalist thing. I don't even know. But my husband was like, something's off. Why don't you go get an evaluation? And I went, and here I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, which was just the tip of the iceberg for me. I really had complex childhood trauma coming from a place of generational trauma. And so, but with that one little diagnosis, I just started to like look back at my life, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this has been here the whole time. And so then I ended up right at the same time I met this alternative healer. And she helped my son overcome something in 3 days. It took her 3 days to resolve this. And the doctors hadn't been able to resolve it for years. And I went back to her and I was like, I have this problem. Can you help me too? Because she was doing some electromagnetic thing. I don't even know, some resonance. My mind was blown. So I didn't even store the information properly. But she was the one who handed me this training DVD set for emotional freedom techniques. And she said, try this, it will change your life. And by that time, I would have stood on my head if she had told me to. Right. And I went home, I watched the training DVD set. It was not talk therapy. So now I'm all ears. Talk to me. And it's a little weird. And I like that. It's a little cutting edge. So I'm kind of hoping it works, but not really. And that night I laid in bed with racing thoughts and insomnia. And I need to get to bed. Somebody's going to wake up. And it was just ramping up. And something said, try that intervention. And so I got the thing out and started tapping on all the points, trying to find them. And I yawned in one round. And so I just tried again and kept tapping again. And by the time I was finished with my second round, I had fallen asleep. I woke up the next morning and I was like, I slept. I didn't even decide to sleep. And I was like, what else can I try this on? And I just went off. I tried it. Any symptom of obsessive compulsive disorder, I'd used it on, and then I would be free from it. And then it was like, I threw all my jars away. There were so many things I had been doing that were just a little bit off that I just started thinking more clearly. I started solving problems. I started healing. It was just phenomenal. It was just this one, and I thought it was the intervention. But then later getting trained in the other interventions, they did the same thing a little differently, a little different route, but still the same end result. And I thought, if I ever go back, this is what I'm going to do. And so this is really, really what I've done. And in the beginning, it was just helping people feel better, but then they'd still have a disorder. And so then I'm like, well, what's up with this? We need to resolve this whole thing. Can we? And so my clients and we would experiment, and then I'd started seeing patterns and they were healing. And then I was like, can we do this faster? Because who wants to drag this stuff around? Right. And that's really when I really developed my curriculum and my process for resolving disorders in 2 to 6 months instead of 2 to 6 years. And
so have you reversed your OCD diagnosis?
I don't struggle with obsessive compulsive disorder.
So how old are your kids, Rachel?
Oh, gosh. I had a newborn.
Well, they were 3 under 3. So what are they now?
Yeah. 8. Right now, they are 16, 14, 13, 10, and 4. I have 5 now.
Good. Great. So this is what the 16-year-old says. Mommy's in there patting her clavicle. Things aren't good. Go back to your room. Tells the 4-year-old, this is not going to turn out well if you don't let mommy pat her clavicle.
You know, what's interesting is that my kids were a little too young to figure that out. But my clients, their kids will say, hey, mommy, I think you need to do that tapping thing.
Isn't that?
And mommy changes into a whole nother person because mommy's brain starts working well.
Can we do this with our kid? Like, how old?
Yes.
Is your 4-year-old ready to grasp this?
Yes, she already. I know I should tap mommy and she'll do her little butterfly tapping. She's dealing with some nightmares.
Yeah.
And
or
they're scary.
School. They're bullies at school, or
they're bullies at school.
She wants to wear red and it's blue day. I mean, there are things that create anxiety for them. Yes.
That's right. That's exact. And just learning how to be yourself is scary. And yet, many of us didn't get to do that at that age. Oh, right. Yeah. We're learning how to do that now. And our nervous system's like, what are we doing? Right. And go back to, being like everybody else. And here we can help our nervous systems with that. And then we can also help our nervous system, our children's nervous system, as they're going through this. Because there's so much of us that's totally fine with being exactly who we are. Yeah. It's this process. It's right. In the body. It's all the memories where it wasn't okay. And brains resolve that stuff and clear out the blocks. And next thing you know, you're being yourself.
Which is so valuable, because I think too, I have a lot of childhood trauma. That's part of my story. I mean, I'm resilient. Yeah. I mean, I really have an amazing story. But the downside of that is I didn't let my kids have normal everyday anxieties because I think, do you know what I went through?
That's right.
You're worried about if it's blue day and red day or whatever, it was. I couldn't then relate on their level, and I missed something because now I know anxiety is real, and whatever is a bear to them is a bear to them.
That's right.
And so there's, on the one hand, you and I have plowed through and survived. For me, on the other hand, it's now teaching me that there are real anxieties for kids of all ages, and whatever it is for them, it's real.
That's exactly right. And it's wonderful they're not struggling with the same thing we were struggling with, the kind of traumas we were.
Yeah, that's true.
And really, when we're doing this, it's really not about if the experience was worthy of being traumatic or not. It's could their brain process it?
Yeah.
And it's really that simple. Lots of people will come to me and it's like, I shouldn't have this anxiety disorder. Okay, but you do. And as we get in there and look at what's going on, there's plenty of things their system could not process. It's not a right or wrong thing. Its systems need help processing what's going on here on Earth and in our family systems and at work. And we're designed like that.
What do anxieties mask themselves as, though? Eating disorder, OCD, addiction? What do you think?
All of that. Right. So anxiety is the brain trying to resolve issues, but it's like revving up the nervous system. And then once you go into a fight, flight, freeze, or faint, your body needs to receive the message. Your survival system needs to receive the message that it's safe now. And we need to use a mind-body intervention, and we already know this. So to give that message to the survival system, because if we use other methods, it's not listening. And so all of a sudden you throw a mind-body intervention on there, and now you're going through your calming phases, your relaxation, your regulation. And what happens is that some of us find that we throw some alcohol on this and the survival system will instantly chill out. But yeah, it's a mind-body intervention. It works. It also has all these side effects. Cutting, sex addiction, emotional eating. Food is a great way to communicate with your survival system. We're safe. Your survival system knows you don't eat food and be chased by lions at the same time. So if we're eating food, we must be safe. We will let this thing calm down. And so a lot of these things, we think that we're just weak. Every brain has to get to a regulated state, and brains will do anything to do that, including override you and make you do things that are harmful to you in the long term, but really serve the function of regulation now. And so that's really why we want to hand people interventions that work directly with that part of the brain that aren't alcohol. We want our nervous systems to learn that there are really great ways to do this regulation thing without harming ourselves. And when I find, and I work with people that are experiencing emotional eating, cutting, addictions, things like that, and those are what I hear is my nervous system. I can't get it to regulate. It's not coming out of this survival mode so I can relax and do the rest of my healing functions. And so that's not something to criminalize. That's not something to shame somebody about. I don't feel that way. And so I'm like, well, let's help your brain. Let's get it the support that it wants. And all of a sudden it is. And the next thing you know, they don't need the emotional eating, the alcohol, the cutting, and they move on. And then they learn how to work with their brain. It becomes one of their best friends, and off they're going. And so it's really transformational.
So then is part of anxiety then things like shame or from the past that triggers? Will that also put you that, because it's a cortisol. Yes. I mean, I think of it because I'm a health coach and I'm dealing with women mainly women all the time. So it's that cortisol response, and we want our cortisol to calm down at certain times of the day. We do want it up in the morning, get us going. So do those things, those memories from our past also trigger not just anxiety for the future, but memories from our past, shame? That's what I was thinking, shame.
Absolutely. And the body is sending that stuff up all the time. But if you think about the positive emotions, zip through the process, right? The negative ones, shame, fear, worry, hatred, self-hatred, all these ones are really important information and energy, but they register in the brain as pain. And so they have a hard time making it past the survival system. And so the survival system, as these things are coming up, is kind of like, I'm under attack here. Right. And so it's, and the body's still sending up the shame and the old memories and the things like that are registering as pain. And now you're in a survival state. Right. And that feels like anxiety. Those survival states is where we feel restless and anxious and our heart's racing. And because we're experiencing a form of pain that is not often acknowledged, and that we don't have a great practice working with. And we're like, we shouldn't even be feeling this. I'm not in that situation. Your body doesn't know that. Your system hasn't figured that out. As a matter of fact, as we get this stuff processed, it's actually your body's way of figuring out that stuff isn't happening now. That stuff isn't relevant to this. And let's take that pain and resolve that and convert that into the next levels of wellness for our life. And so that's how we really get these symptoms to stop, while helping our system figure these things out, that we don't need to be afraid anymore. Instead of telling it, you shouldn't be this, you shouldn't. No, it hasn't figured that out yet. Let's respect that it has its own process for figuring that out and help it with that process. And then done.
Sometimes when people have that childhood trauma and triggers, it's made me seek out joyful things. Like, I don't want the pain. I've suffered enough. I don't want the pain. So I jokingly say this all the time, personally, and on my podcast. I haven't turned the news on since March 10th, 2020. Like, I'm not kidding. I have not.
Right.
And I'm a journalist too, so I do keep up with what's going on, but I have my device so I can pick and choose. Same thing with the newspaper, because I felt so helpless during those early days of COVID, and then I felt like certain people were getting blamed for COVID, and I couldn't stand it. So was I being a weenie by avoiding the pain? Should I just tap my way out of that? Or is it okay sometimes to avoid some things that you go, you know what, not the best path for me?
That's right. The second option.
Okay.
We can experience system overload, because whatever we experience, our brain has to process it.
Right.
And sometimes you're just like, I'm not doing all of that, nor is it the right thing for my life.
Right. And nor can I control anything. I mean,
that's right. And the way this stuff is delivered really comes after our nervous system. It really spreads fear through our nervous system. And it's like, we have to sort that. I hope that one day we will start sharing news in a way that helps people use their thinking center, but because it's coming through fear centers, it's shifting us into survival state and really moving us around, which is knowledge, right? If whoever is controlling your nervous system has the remote control to your behavior.
Wow.
And so it's like, if the job there is, can you keep control of your nervous system while listening to the news? If you can, keep going. But if you're noticing, hey, I'm not sleeping as well, I'm finding myself angry at my neighbors, I'm arguing, I'm fleeing, I don't want to get out of bed in the morning, then your system's struggling to process the information that's coming through it. And that, I think, as a responsible adult, is to acknowledge that and say, I can't do this. Like right now, as a responsible adult, I'm going to tell you right now, I cannot go run a marathon. Okay, I will probably die. So I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. I need you to live. You've got 5 kids at home.
Thank you. So it's just knowing that about ourselves and taking responsibility for that. But what happens is, a lot of times as we do that, our culture is set up, no, you should just take it. No, you should be able to do that more. And we're not being validated in owning what we can actually handle and what we can't handle and what's the right timing for us. And we're being pushed into, well, if you can't now, then shame, disqualification, rejection, which is another assault to our nervous system. So, and that will need to be processed as well. And some of us are like, look, I have 2 options here. I can douse myself with the news or douse myself with the rejection from my community. And maybe I'm going to just take the news. Okay. In which case, understand, I would encourage you to tap, help your system.
No, that's great. And it's the same, I guess, perspective with social media. There are so many people. Yeah. I never thought, when I got on Facebook back when the earth cooled in 2000, I think I started in 2006 or 7 on Facebook. I never thought I would unfollow somebody, because that's when people just shared news of what they ate for lunch. Remember?
Yes. Yeah.
I had tuna fish sandwich for lunch, and that was it. Nobody argued over whether the tuna was loved and massaged and wild caught. Yes. Nobody discussed that. They were like, Great. Sally had a tuna sandwich and we moved on. And then it got so divisive with anything Sally said about her tuna sandwich. The tuna haters, the tuna lovers, the people, all that. And then came this wonderful thing called unfollow on social media. And then, girl, I had to incorporate that in my life, unfollow. And there's freedom in that. So I guess it is a darker time than what our grandparents went through because they didn't know it. They knew some people's opinion because they went to the coffee shop and they gossiped and smoked cigarettes and drank black coffee or Sanka in the mornings, right? Well, now what we're doing is that times a million. And now I'm not going to the coffee shop anymore because I don't like to smoke and I've never been a coffee drinker. That's how I feel about social media.
Yeah.
How do you tell people how to deal with social media? Because it can be, as we know, it can be very negative.
It doesn't come up that much for me, honestly.
Really?
No, especially because I don't give people advice because I just want to make sure their brain is processing the information, and their brain will tell them this is not good. I don't want to do this anymore. Or they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm using social media to hide, or I'm going to social media and I feel like I'm being beaten. And I'm being whipped and it's really harmful. I don't want to do it anymore. Great. They're hearing their body's feedback. They're hearing their feedback from their mind and they're taking the actions they want to take. That's great brain function. Right? Now, if I have a client who's sitting there and they come back to me, which I have had this, and they're going back, I know, and they're hearing the pain and they're seeing the pain. I know that that their brain is using the pain for something important to it, which a lot of times is where we'll process. Like I had one client who was watching scary movies repeatedly, and they're like, I know this is bad for me, but I can't stop. Yeah. Well, they were really needing to process the trauma and the fear that they had as a child, and the movie was helping them do that unconsciously. So I would have them use the intervention with that, while they're watching the horror movies. We're using interventions, but we're also going back to the memory where they were a child and they were addicted to the fear. And why did that happen? Well, because of X, Y, and Z was happening in the home, and they had terror, and the movies then were helping them process, where they were trying to process the terror, but it was not completing the process. It was just actually re-traumatizing them, just like it's doing in the present. So a lot of our use with social media is much, for brain function, it's much more complex than it is just unfollow somebody. It's, well, can you? Well, okay, why can't you? Yeah. Let's go find the reason.
We had this terrible kidnapping in Memphis, and we're about 2 hours or so from Memphis here in Little Rock. And the girl was on an early morning run. There were two, there was an abduction and a kidnapping, because they're a little different, in 24-hour period in Memphis. And I was with my daughter, and I just said to her, oh my gosh, I hear that and I worry so much. And she goes, Mom, stop. And I said, what? And she goes, I didn't know this. She goes, you're getting a dopamine hit. Because I said, what would you do? What would we do if that were you and you had the babies in the car? Because, grandchildren. And she said, stop, you're getting a dopamine hit. I go, what? Because I know what a dopamine hit is. That's the feel-good chills. It gives you a hit because you are overthinking it or over-empathizing. I don't know what the psychological term would be. But she said, you have to stop. I'm not in Memphis. The girls and I are not in a car being held at gunpoint. That's a 1 in a million. It doesn't happen every day, all the time. And so I realized that it did I can't even explain. It didn't give me pleasure, but there was something about it that it let me build all this anxiety. And then
that's right.
I really couldn't resolve it because I'm not a part of it. But so she wasn't making it up. She heard some therapist, she said, say this, but it's good for grandparents to hear these things, because some of the things I was tapping about earlier was about my children and my grandchildren. So kind of explain then, why is my brain doing that?
That's a good question. I don't know. We'd have to find out. But there is a reason, right?
Yeah.
And it thinks that that's the thing to do. Something was triggered. Something was activated. A lot of times in there, it's really good to take care of yourself in the moment, to use an intervention right then, because we want that worry and that fear stream or compulsion or a surge. We want your brain to process all that information. We don't just want to stuff it back down. But really then it's like, we really need to take care of you in the moment, right? And then we want to go find, where is this coming from? And the mind and body will tell you exactly where that's coming from. And so there's strategies for this. This is stuff that I teach people, how to follow a symptom all the way back to a memory, and how to get your brain to bring up past memories for you, those sorts of things, and what all this means, and how to run all these, how to look out for the clues that your brain is already sending you to create the healing. And so I would say we would want to figure out what that root is, but your brain thought that was appropriate there. It said, oh, this is happening, go. And we want to, why did you think that's appropriate? And the brain will say, well, let me show you why. And then that's the stuff you want to resolve.
Okay. I asked the brain, because my husband's even said, he goes, how does your brain go there from your kids are 5 minutes late and they're dead in the Arkansas River? Like,
yep.
And this is why I told him one time, I said, when you are raised in such unpredictability, like I was, right, whether it was watching physical abuse, being sexually abused, a lot of drug use, illicit drug use, obviously in the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
I said, I always thought, well, if I were just prepared, I would have walked through that better. And so I do that to prepare myself, but for things that will never happen, Yeah. But I told it, because we just had this conversation. I said, I think it's my way of being prepared if I ever get that phone call. Your daughter has been abducted with her daughters, which again is a 1 in a million thing. But does that make any sense? Now that I have you here, I've never really used a guest like this. But
the problem here is that none of these are logical problems. You don't have a logical problem with this. It's not a problem with your prefrontal cortex. You do not lack understanding. There is a problem with your survival system. Yes. But deeper than that, there's a part of your system, whether it's your subconscious mind or your body, that is sending up fear right there, and is sending up messages of danger that your brain then is responding to, and then everybody's getting all in a huff. So the problem is emotional. It's somatic. It's emotions. And so we need to use the right strategies to process emotion. And a lot of times we're trying to use logical strategies, but this is not a logical problem. You logically know this is not likely.
Right.
You have, don't use your thinking center with this. We actually need to help the body and the subconscious mind resolve whatever this is. And they have a different process for that. They have this process. Go ahead.
So we can talk ourselves off the ledge and then say, now let's deal with the body's response to the irrational thinking.
And what's creating that, the cause of the irrational thinking. And the irrational thinking is usually actually emotional thinking. It's because it feels like this, it must be true. That's a sign the brain is not near done with its healing process, with its process of understanding and processing the information the body's sending it. It's like, that's the most raw form of it. But because if we can't get this stuff resolved and processed, all of a sudden we're just left with the emotional reasoning, and it's there so long and it feels so true that we're finally like, okay, fine, I'm just going to go with it. But really that's unprocessed stuff. You don't want to paint your life with that. You don't want to be responding and reacting to that stuff. You want to wait till it finishes the process where your brain, takes all that emotion off, converts it into the positive stuff, and then also runs it through the logic and the reasoning and your values and your morals and your skills. That's when you want to use it. You don't want to use it while it's still in survival's area. And your animal part of the brain, and your survival part of the brain, that part of the brain does not know how to help you thrive. It only knows how to survive. That's its whole function. And if you start using the information that just has made it to that part of the brain, then your life looks like survival mode. It looks like you're just surviving, where if we can get more of the information to the front of your brain, we've got thriving, and your life will look like that as well.
That is really impressive. It just shows how capable the human body is. I always quote God's word that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And in that things can be overcome. Now, do I understand that there's a need for therapy and medication? Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. But it's amazing what the brain and body can do. Your website is great. And we're putting a link to that in the show notes that people can follow you, because Rachel is spelled RACHELLE. So Rachel McCloud, I think it's rachelmccloud.com, right?
Yep.
Is the website.
Yep.
So Rachel on McCloud. It, you have several bullet points, but one is the 5-step process for working with the brain to resolve one symptom after another. Then have we covered any of that with this?
That's it. Really, once you can do this once, and really you're just walking the brain through its own process. And once you can get that to complete once, then you can do it again. And you can do it again and again. And really, then you want to move your brain around. Well, like, hey, come over here and resolve this symptom that is bothering me.
Okay.
And you can guide it over there, and you can do that and on and on and on until a lot of times we don't even have to do all the work. We have to do enough work to kind of retrain the brain, get that process nice and strong again, and then get it rolling. And we're doing the work, and then it's doing a lot of the work. And you just start to see your life shift. Like my clients will say, I'm just in part 1 and I can see the ripple effects of healing throughout my life. And that's because their brain is that thing is turning on. There's not a better helper to your life and a better creator to your life than your own brain. It's the only thing on earth designed to make your life awesome for you. And if it's not working well, life is not that fabulous. And we want that. Yeah. We want that partner up and running and really doing well. And then we can really partner with it to get the work done we want. I want this symptom gone. I want this one. I don't have to tolerate this anymore. And no, you don't. Because you can take your brain over there and say, hey, let's do this. And it does.
Let's talk about one of your videos that I hadn't watched yet. It's the 3 reasons why your parents were emotionally unavailable and why you may be too. What do you have there? That's juicy.
Yeah. This is, I can't remember exactly the 3 points, but I'll tell you how it works is that we get our parents' nervous system. It doesn't matter what they tell us. It doesn't matter any of that stuff, what they expect from us, what they want from us, what we get their nervous system. And if they were emotionally unavailable, we were practicing that as well. We were being conditioned to also be emotionally unavailable. And so when we come here and we're like, why am I emotionally unavailable? Well, let's look down the line. And when this is the cause, it's conditioning and it's subconscious programming. And so we can really help the brain clear that stuff out and get rid of the old programming and really wire in the programming that's authentic and helpful to you and not keep you limited to what your parents gave you. Because that's really frustrating because we are always outgrowing our subconscious programming. And so, but if our system isn't updating because it can't complete this process, then we're stuck with outdated, no longer useful to us subconscious programming. And that's a really frustrating place to be.
So then that would continue on with moms who are narcissistic, dads who are addicts.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of with addiction, there's a lot of emotional unavailability because they were physically, right. They were physically and emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
But then with any type of mental illness, there are things that.
That's right.
Kids.
And what happens there is that we have mirroring neurons in our brain, right? In the prefrontal cortex in there. And so when we are watching people, that part of our brain is firing off just like they are when they're doing their activity. So our brain is practicing the same activity we're watching them practice. And as children, that's why we're learning so many things. It's like if mom's depressed and we're watching her, we're practicing depression. If mom's is screaming and yelling, our brain is practicing screaming. So we're already doing this stuff. And even though logically we understand and we get to adults and we're like, I'm never going to be like her. We can't just take it out of our thinking center. We have to get it out of our nervous system. We have to get it out of our body. And our system has a process for doing that. And if it's doing that, great. You are going to see yourself an upgraded version and more of who you are and your skills. And if it's not doing that, you're going to be very limited by what you saw as a child and how you were conditioned and programmed. And what's interesting is a lot of times we will not know we have this conditioning until we get into intimate relationships, because then we start running the intimate relationship programs that we were conditioned for. And then we're like, I thought I was a smart, intelligent woman. Why am I doing all this nonsense? Why am I behaving like this? Why am I afraid? Why is there all this anxiety? Why? And it's like, well, now, even though you are, and you have new skills, your nervous system has still been conditioned, and that needs to resolve so that your brain will really bring your nervous system in alignment with your goals, and that's its job, and your values and your skills. And then all of a sudden you're doing the things that you have been practicing. You're doing the things that you believe in, your values and your morals, instead of how you were conditioned. And that's really where we start feeling more confident in ourselves, more self-trust. We relax more. We don't feel like we have to hold on so tight to make sure we don't do that thing mom used to do. And we can just trust our system to do the good now. And we watch it do that. And that's really how we learn that it's doing. Anyway, we're on a new thing.
There's also something, though, with familiarity with kids, because years ago, my family and I worked with a group in Central Arkansas where there was a lot of poverty, and we did like after school programs and stuff like that. And the kids would come home and stay with us for like the night or whatever. And even though we knew some of them came from abusive homes, they still wanted to go back to their home.
Yes.
And there was something, because I was thinking, I felt like we were providing a safe haven, that they would want to stay with us. No, that little girl every time would want to go back to that grandmother who we thought there were allegations that there was abuse. Now, I don't remember our Department of Human Services gets involved in those things. But I remember then thinking, I was wondering why her brain wouldn't let her feel safe with us, but would rather go back to that. What is that about our brain?
A couple of things: conditioning, familiarity, comfort zone. This is bad, but I know I'm going to live for the most part, right? I mean, that's the biggest thought process our survival system has. Will we live or will we die? Okay, I don't know over here with these nice people, but I know with grandma, it's not going to be, I know I'm going to be okay, you know? And so your survival system is going to go towards that. It just knows that. But the other piece is that we are animals. I mean, we're talking about bonding. We're talking about a whole chemical structure of all the attachment and just the bonding there, you know? And I think that, you know, adults really struggle with this too. You know, this is what some of our fear of success is about. Our parents may have already passed away. We're still struggling with fear of success, right? It's about not wanting to leave. It's not being able to leave. It's part of this conditioning piece and the subconscious programming. And so when I'm working with people with this, we're really working on the body, the somatics. We're working on the animal parts of us that want to stay, that are programmed to stay, our pack animals. You know, that's where we run into those invisible walls and invisible ceilings that we can't get through. And that information is so deeply unconscious and so much in our body that it's just, we're not even going to do the logical thing right now. I don't even want to process this in words. Let's help the rest of your body really decide if it still wants to do this or not. You know
who I see that with the most as a health coach are people who battle obesity. And I say battle because I do feel like for them, it is something every day. That's all I can say is a battle for them. But I think it goes back to familiarity with them. There's something, and maybe you're talking about emotional food triggers and things like that. So it may be that comfort, but I'm trying to help people get the mindset that they can eat in a certain eating window every day and healthy, nutritious foods that you love that love you back. So how can I help communicate that to somebody? How can I, without shaking them like this, going, listen to me? Because I'm not trying to change anybody, but I do know people come to me because they want help. But sometimes they'll just say, I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah. I think if, as you can see this and you can understand this from their survival system's perspective, their survival system doesn't know if they'll survive if they're thin. You know, wow. Their survival system doesn't know if they'll survive if they're fit, right? We've got so many other things going on in here. Like many men and women that are dealing with obesity have been sexually abused, come from domestic violent homes, sometimes using the weight to hide, sometimes using as a survival strategy, right? Sometimes using the weight to regulate. So there's some really powerful things that have to be taken care of in order for for the doors to be able to be open to walk through these things. And then we've got the traumas of being ostracized. We've got the daily battles of the aggressions and the microaggressions. I mean, it's just a lot of stress processing and a lot of overhauling the subconscious programming that has to take place. And what's really great is that all the work that needs to be done is the electrical parts of us. So it doesn't have to take a long time, but it really does need to be done.
So they could use the EFT. Quickly. They could use the EFT then. And so there is a cortisol response then for them running to the chocolate chip cookies or overeating or overindulging. There's something to that they could start with the tapping. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's what I would recommend, because in that moment, they're running the Go Get the Food program. Well, what is that made of? Well, it's probably made of terror.
It's probably made of shame. It's probably made of desperation.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a suffocating feeling when they don't do their compulsion. Like if you were to ask them not to go get the food, their nervous system literally thinks it's going to die. Wow. And so, they'll reach for the food because now they can breathe again, literally. Wow. And so there's so much going on in here that is much bigger than have some willpower.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think what's important is that you do your piece of this stuff, helping people understand the pathway, the cognitive pieces of this, the planning, the thinking through all these things. And then just like me, I don't do that stuff. I can't, that is not my skill set, but is your brain working well? Can we process this trauma? Can we help your brain understand you're actually okay and safe right now in this moment? And so that you don't have to reach for the food, or that, whatever's in there, we can resolve that. Yes, that's my piece of things. But I think if we're getting closer to having a more holistic approach to things, even though many of us specialize in very specific things.
Oh, I'm seeing that all the time. That's kind of the umbrella of the type of medicine that I subscribe to, and that's the functional medicine approach of why we're sick.
Yes.
And what you deal with, we say, are the downstream results of upstream problems. So, and it is, that's why my VAC certification says integrative nutrition, meaning we're integrating all the things.
Yes.
And definitely what the brain says. Definitely what your food tells you, definitely what your outside tells you, definitely what your spouse tells you. I mean, it all comes together. And I'm sorry that I'm sorry that people aren't seeing that yet, because that's where I do want to shake them and go, listen, there is hope for you. That's what I want to tell everybody. There is hope for you. We can deal with these things. Okay, so then that would go, Rachel, with addiction is another thing that we see a lot of. And it could also be there's some trigger. See, when you said that about the person reaching for the food and them really feeling like they have to, or they won't be able to breathe.
Yeah.
That makes me understand. That's kind of that upstream is telling there. And the downstream effect is the obesity or the cardiovascular disease or type 2 diabetes.
That's right.
That's way down the line. We want to know why. So the why.
That's right.
Are those triggers.
And when we deal with those root issues, it makes this whole thing so much easier. It's very similar. Like when I learned how to clean a house, like I did not know. And with 3 children, you got to figure that stuff out. Yeah. Otherwise somebody's going to hurt themselves. I was trying to do the cleaning, right? And as I figured this stuff and I'm tapping with it and I'm trying to understand this and just do the work, I realized these tasks are not hard. How I feel about these tasks are hard. The flashbacks I'm having around these tasks are incapacitating. Wow. I cannot with this. And it was just, I just decided I would just my goal is not get the work done. My goal is go there, trigger all this stuff and tap through as much as I could so I could process what's coming up. And the next thing I knew, it was easy to do the thing. It was easy to wipe the counter down. It was easy to complete the laundry or put it away, where before it was just, I wanted to go to sleep. My nervous system was so overwhelmed because of the amount of flashbacks, the amount of emotional distress, failure. I mean, all these things that was running through. And it took me going slow and listening and feeling into this and like questioning, why can't I do this simple thing that people across America are doing all the time?
All right.
Right. And I'm hearing my mother's voice and her relationship with the laundry. I'm hearing my grandma's voice. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling the hopelessness and the uselessness running through my body. And it was just like my system could not, no matter how smart I am, cannot fight that. And I had one client who was severely obese, and she came in and I forbade her. I was like, I don't get to do this, but if I can, I want to forbid you to any exercise routines or any diets. Like, please do not do them. Especially as we were working together, I saw this was really setting her backwards. And I'm like, we can't solve that problem right now. So let's just turn those functions off and let's work where we need to. And she had massive trauma and massive grief and pain around how her father did not show up for her in her life, but would show up for her brother and would reject her. And this is what we worked on for the first 4 months. And as she started healing, she just started healing. And we were focused. 6 months later, she had lost 60 pounds. A year later, she had lost 120 and I was checking. I was like, you're not exercising, right? Don't do that stuff. We're gonna, because we need, those are whole subconscious programs, right? When you start the exercising program, you start all the other ones. I don't know what's in there. It didn't work last time. When we get there, we're going to pull those up and we're going to get your brain reprocessing them. So they're updated and they're not self-harming any longer, And so, but it was like, she had already, like, it was such a massive win for her, but it was like, some of that weight was just trauma. It was like emotional bleeding happening. And it's like, as we healed those wounds and that bleeding wasn't taking place, her body was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to let this stuff go. I don't need it anymore. Or I'm not, what happens when we're in survival, are constantly surviving these emotional wounds. We don't have time for the healing functions. We don't have time for deep, restful sleep. We don't have the space for the things that are required to digest and rest and recover and heal. And so when we heal the emotional wounds, all of a sudden, all the other functions turn on, because the body doesn't really know the difference between a physical wound and emotional wound. And we have all these, if you break your leg, you go do this. But if you break an emotional bone, what do? Keep going, walk it off and put that crutch down. But if somebody has a broken leg, they get all the crutches they need. And you get in trouble for not using your crutch.
Ooh, that's good.
And so over here, it's like, no, use your crutch and let's try to make that crutch as healthy as possible. Can we swap some crutches out, and find crutches that actually work, and let's heal, get you strong enough so that you put those crutches down. You don't need them anymore. And you don't need them anymore.
Okay, everybody listening in your cars, keep your one hand on the wheels. But everybody, we're going to start tapping. We're going to tap our way to 2023, because here we are in the fourth quarter of 2022, and we're going to tap our way. We're going to get through the holidays. We're going to get through. That's a big time. Think about all the anxiety and stuff that's triggered.
That's right.
And even things.
Yes.
COVID has divided families emotionally so much. And we all dread seeing that person that's going to talk about this at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and we're going to tap our ways through.
Or we're going to, or just watching other families be healthy and happy, and you're not, and they're in their pajamas, and your family's not. It can be a really painful time for people.
For a lot of people. Rachel, you're great. Y'all go to her website. Information is in the show notes, and everybody get tapping. Come on. Let me start right here. I'm going to go all the way around.
I love it. That's right. And you know what? You can get the right points. You don't have to get all the right points. And, people will find their favorite ones. And in a JIP, they'll just be tapping on those points. It's really so forgiving and so easy to learn. It's my favorite intervention to pass to people, because it's the simplest way to do some really, really powerful brain work. So
it's what works for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fisher Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.